late June of 2014, a 28-year-old German man by the name of Lars Mittank took a vacation to the Bulgarian seaside resort of Golden Sands. Popular with tourists from all over Europe, Golden Sands is a major resort town on the northern Bulgarian Black Sea coast, adjacent to a national park of the same name in the municipality of Varna. Located just over 15 kilometers north of downtown Varna, it is virtually connected to the city by a continuous swath of resorts and villa communities. On the 6th of July, Lars and his group of friends found themselves in a disagreement with another group of young German men in a local bar. Lars and his companions were fans of the German football team Werder Bremen, while the opposing group were Bayern Munich supporters. There's a rather high-profile rivalry between the two football clubs, and the playful disagreement soon descended into a violent confrontation when one member of each group began pushing and shoving each other. The fight between the two of them quickly became a full-on bar brawl between the two groups. Chairs and bottles were thrown, pool cues were used as weapons, and in the fray, Mittank suffered a ruptured eardrum from a particularly vicious strike. Mittank was forced to visit the local doctor to have his head examined. It was discovered that the injury was a particularly nasty one that came with a rather high risk of internal infection. So the doctor prescribed a course of the antibiotic cefuroxime and advised Lars not to fly for the next couple of weeks, as it would risk seriously exacerbating the injury and cause a grievous amount of pain. It would also require another examination at the Bulgarian hospital in the coming weeks in order to ensure the wound was properly on the mend. So, Lars stayed in Bulgaria while his friends drove to the airport and flew back to Germany. He took a taxi back to the Hotel Color Varna, making reservations that would cover his recuperation period, then tried to spend the next few days relaxing and healing from his particularly nasty wound. But just a day after his friends left him behind in Bulgaria, Lars began to act very oddly indeed. His bizarre and erratic behavior was captured by the hotel's closed-circuit television security cameras. He ran around the hotel, looking over his shoulder, accusing staff and guests alike of plotting against him. A few of those encounters almost turned violent, and on more than one occasion, the hotel staff threatened to call the police. Finally, once Lars's behavior had become unbearable, the hotel staff asked him to gather his belongings and leave, as such violent outbursts were strictly against hotel policy and could no longer be tolerated. But before he checked out of the hotel, Lars made a call to his mother back in Germany. She later stated that he seemed extremely upset and told her in hushed tones that 4 German men, possibly the same his friend group fought with in the bar that day, were coming to kill him. He told her that he had made a significant withdrawal of cash to live off of and that she should cancel his credit cards. When she asked why, Lars told her that the men could use them to track his movements. Where he got such an idea is a mystery, but he seemed very, very insistent that this was the case. We know that on the 8th of July, Lars Mittank traveled to Varna Airport in an attempt to travel back home to Germany, against the doctor's wishes. He attempted to purchase a ticket on a flight back home, but after looking around the airport and apparently seeing something, became so flustered and frightened that he abandoned the attempt altogether. Lars then sought out a medical services area of the airport, although it is clear that he did not ask for any medical attention and would not tell those inside why he wished to remain there. They later confirmed that he seemed jumpy and paranoid, as if though he was hiding from someone that was hunting him. About 45 minutes after originally taking shelter in the medical services area, the airport's CCTV cameras captured some kind of construction worker making their way over to the medical area. This seems to have triggered Lars into rushing out of the airport, having abandoned his backpack and luggage altogether. More CCTV footage shows Lars running across a 2-lane highway, dodging speeding vehicles as he does so before reaching a large fence. Lars scaled the fence with frightening strength and speed, then sprints full pelt across a meadow before disappearing into a field of sunflowers with a set of deep woods beyond them. Police investigated the incident thoroughly but found no evidence that Lars was being followed by anyone. They even contacted the group Lars's friends had fought with, but they all had alibis that confirmed that they were nowhere near the airport on the day of Lars' disappearance. Many theories about what happened are all over the internet. Some theories believe that he was being used as a drug mule. Some believe that he suffered a psychotic episode. Only 2 things are completely certain regarding this behavior and unexplainable incident. The first is that Lars did not suffer from any form of mental illness. The second is that Lars was never seen again, anywhere, or by anyone.
Back when I was 13 years old, I was in middle school, and I really needed a math tutor who would give me classes since I was very bad at math and struggling. I considered my circle of friends very big, so I asked around for any recommendations for math tutors who would give me classes. And to my surprise, about 4 of my friends recommended the same person. Someone we'll call C for this story. I asked for C's number and they gave it to me. Then I texted him and asked him all about the classes. Questions like what time he would be available to come over and what the price of the class would cost. We discussed and planned a little bit, and then soon I'd be having my first class with him within a week. I was both nervous and ready. I wasn't a lazy or bad student, and it killed me that I couldn't get a grip of this math, so I was ready to bring my grades back up. But I was also nervous because I just didn't know this guy. Well, he came over just in time, and we sat at a desk I have at my house. C was middle-aged, which really made me uncomfortable, but my parents seemed to like the guy. He presented himself well, and I had to give him credit for that. Besides, I had an important test coming up in some weeks, and I didn't know a thing, so there was no going back. The classes actually went really well. He was a patient and good teacher, and everything was normal. C was funny too, which made the classes pleasant of all things. The weeks went by, and I finally had to take my big math test, and I actually got a good grade on it. Seeing that my grades came up like that so quickly, I decided to keep studying with C, because I'd be starting geometry soon, and I already knew how bad I was at that subject as well. Classes were fun with C, and everything was fine. My friends gave me really good comments about him, and I soon stopped feeling uncomfortable about his age. Time went by, and everything was great, until one class. My school has guidance class second period, and we usually do nothing, so I talk to people and fool around. I was talking to a friend of mine one day about how nervous we were for the upcoming test, and she asked me who was my tutor. She knew I had one, but she didn't know who, and I told her it was C. The teacher walking by heard me mention him, so she asked me if he was my tutor. I said yes, but she gave me this shocked expression. I'd never seen her that way, and no lie, it gave me chills. She told me that I need to stop seeing him immediately. She said that he harasses his students once he gains their trust, and she told me a story of a girl who studied with him. She trusted him a bit too much, and C began to touch her. She became uncomfortable and began to back away from C, but C would keep touching and harassing her. It came to the point where her mother reported him to the police, but they couldn't do anything since they didn't have enough evidence and couldn't arrest him. Not to mention at the time he was well trusted and liked around the community. I was actually shocked when I heard this. I asked my teacher if there were any more victims, and she said yes, but most of them are too afraid to come forward to the police, so they go to the school psychiatrist, who was the teacher I was talking to, since it was the guidance class. She continued, saying that he would often do magic tricks to gain trust. I remembered a time where he showed me how he made an eraser disappear and reappear. Everything she was warning me about, he was doing. Right after that class, I called the 4 friends who had recommended C, and I told them to stop seeing him. I told them everything. We stopped contacting C, and we blocked his number. But that didn't stop him from showing up at my house. He stopped by one day, asking my parents if I still needed help, and by then I told my parents everything. They told him to leave and to never come back, but I'll never forget the look he gave me as I watched from the living room. Even after hearing the bad news that I would no longer need a mentor and that we knew about his terrible past, he stood there with a smile, baring his teeth at me. He stared straight into my eyes, and it's almost like he was telling me that this wasn't the last I would see of him. I had nightmares after that. To this day, I'm scared to get another tutor for any classes. I'm very much in disbelief I was in a situation like that, and I'm thankful that one of my teachers knew about C. I don't want to know what C would have done to me if we spent more time together, and luckily, I haven't heard from him since.